Hi, thank you. My name is Alana. I don't know if this question is directed towards any of you specifically. I think all of you could have your own responses to it, your own perspectives, and Seth especially maybe because it's a little bit outside. He could have a fresh perspective because the rest of us are really caught up in what's going on in Newfoundland and Labrador right now. Now we'll get to that. So we've been hearing all morning, all day so far about the oil and gas industry and how prevalent that is in our economy. And I mean, that's hugely important. We're going to be doubling that by 2030. We're on the track for that, at least anyway. But what hasn't been mentioned is Muskrat Falls. And the irony here, of course, is that it's been sold to us as a green technology. And Seth, I don't know how much you know about Muskrat Falls right now. There's a massive inquiry going on, and it gets worse and worse and worse as it goes on. But we, as like how Bill phrased it, we face a massive debt bomb. We are already facing it, and it's about to get worse. So my question is, in keeping Muskrat Falls in mind, how does that change what is required for Newfoundland and Labrador to make this just transition?
All right, maybe Carrie, you can take a stab at that one, and then Seth, if you've got anything you'd like to add.
Okay. I knew Muskrat Falls would come up. But for us as, I mean, the premise, I guess, around how that's rolled out and unfolded is, and the impacts that it's going to have going forward, it's hard to say. Around just transition, I mean, if you drive across the province or anyone who hikes, you can see the amount of transmission lines that have been built in this province and the amount of, I guess, natural forestry that's been removed because of it. So I'm not really in a position to comment on how Muskrat, I don't even know, and I pay attention to the inquiry and that sort of thing. The only good thing I can see about it is that river will never run dry. I don't know if that's of any consolation to, I mean, we live on an island in the North Atlantic with a huge coastline along Labrador. The impacts of climate change and the things we do as a province are huge when it comes to some of those issues. So, I mean, I can't really comment on where I think that's going to happen.
I'll just make the comment here myself that I think Muskrat Falls was a really good example of a good idea that was not properly executed. The project itself could serve to generate a lot of prosperity for Newfoundland and Labrador, but the appropriate people weren't necessarily consulted, our Indigenous groups weren't adequately involved, the long-term consequences weren't fully considered, and the process whereby the project was sanctioned was not transparent. So I think to look at it from a positive perspective, you could take the lessons learned and apply that to what needs to happen now and what could be done in our province to build some more economic prosperity in the face of this massive debt that we're facing. As Seth mentioned, we don't really have much choice when it comes to climate change, even if we are not in a great financial position, the money will be found somewhere in, a more large-scale federal or global response. Seth, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, I do. So I have been following Muskrat Falls, and some British Columbians are as a cautionary tale because we're following you down this rabbit hole. As some of you may be aware, with our own Site C Dam, which is minimally a $10 billion new dam being built in BC's north. The additional insult and irony in the case of the Site C Dam is that really the only need for that electricity is to electrify the fracking fields and the desire to have a liquefied natural gas industry. So it's a green energy to provide electricity to a new and emerging fossil fuel industry. And so many of us are deeply engaged in both of those fights, and you know, at the CCPA BC office, a lot of our climate work is focused on fracking and LNG. Now, the advantage in BC's case with a larger population base is that what will be a massive expenditure, the cost of that will get spread over more ratepayers, but it is going to have a huge impact. It's not going to have as huge an impact in terms of the debt burden and cost to ratepayers as Muskrat Falls relative to each of you. But I do think in both cases, it raises the issue of, you know, all energy, as we make this transition, all energy costs are going to go up. And we need the cost of that to be shared in a progressive way. And so we need to be thinking about income transfers to low and modest income households. We need to be bringing an energy poverty lens to this. We all need to be thinking about how we restructure rates of our hydro systems, whether it's BC Hydro or in Newfoundland. There are creative ways of structuring the rate structure that bring an energy poverty lens to it, rather than just having a postage stamp rate that applies the same to everybody, regardless of their household income. So that's what I mean when I say we need to look at the connections between climate action and inequality. Is how do we do what we need to do on climate in a non-regressive manner, and we need to raise a bunch of new money, as I said, to offset some of these debts. The one I think, you know, light around the cloud in the case of Newfoundland with Muskrat Falls is at least you will have an energy source that is electric as we electrify our whole economy.
One more comment around one of the many probably bad outcomes of Muskrat Falls. And I think someone alluded to it earlier this morning that the actual production and getting it into the grid or the market of alternative energy is not allowed here. So because we're essentially all things Muskrat Falls, which, you know, they put out as green energy, it stymies innovation in the development of other alternative energy sources. And that stymies innovation as itself in an economy where if we were transitioning workers in a just way into another sector, energy, you know, fossil fuel energy into green energy or alternative energy, that's an avenue that's probably closed to us because we don't have as much wind energy, solar energy. We're an island. I mean, tidal energy. There's so many sources of alternative energy being used successfully in not only in other national jurisdictions, but internationally that we don't have. I don't understand it, you know, why we don't, but that's part of the reason. So the point that Muskrat Falls, not only the debt and how poorly managed it was, and was probably initially a good idea, and at some point, it stymies the whole process of innovation in alternative energy, which in the long term will hurt us.